Well, hello there, my name is HW and thank you so much for watching Tone Junkie TV. I've gotten numerous requests to do a sort of Kemper for Dummies video, and so while I don't want to do I don't mean to offend any dummies in the room, this is Kemper 101. Well, first of all, let me start out by telling you everything you've heard about the Kemper is absolutely true. Is it amazingly dynamic and touch sensitive? Yes. Is it fun to play? Is it flexible and easy to use? Absolutely. Will it have you leaving your tube amps at home? Yes, yes, and yes. However, does it sound like a tube amp? Well, no. It sounds like a mic'd up tube amp in the next room. And that's an important distinction. You see, the Kemper is different. It's not a modeler. It's not like a Line 6 pod. It's not even like a modeler that models microphones. The Kemper is unique because it captures real amps and real microphones and real preamps, a real signal chain as they exist at the moment you hit the profile button. So, it can capture a twin on 2, a twin on 6, a twin on 8, a dual rectifier on 10, and everywhere in between. It can do all of it. But does it sound like an amp in the room? No. And there's a lot of debate on how to get it closest to that. But it's important to note that the Kemper is a device really designed to get your sound to the listener. Every sound you've ever heard has been a mic'd up, captured sound, unless you've been in the room with that amplifier. Speaking about guitar tones here, you never heard Hendrix's amp. You never heard Eric Clapton's amp. You never heard whoever's you idolize, whoever that person is, that group is. You've probably never heard their amp. You've heard it captured. And you've heard it captured with microphones and preamps and EQs and mixed into a track. And that's important to note because the Kemper allows us to control all of those variables and get our sound not just out of some speakers, but allows us to get our sound all the way to the listener. Allows us to send it to the front of house, to the mixing desk, to the recording desk. The Kemper is an amazingly versatile piece of gear, and I hope that whether you just bought a Kemper, you just unboxed your Kemper, I hope that you find this video very informative, educational, and a little bit entertaining. Okay, first things first, jumping in here, the first control you should know about is the little chicken head selector knob. It tells us which mode we're going to be in. If I put it on the power logo here, it's going to turn itself off. So let's not do that. If I put it here to tuner, well, here it is. We got a tuner. Check this out. There we go. Now I'm in tune. Now it's important to note that even if you switch into browser mode, which is where we're going to sit for most of this video, where I'm going to teach you about the Kemper, we still have these nice little tuner lights that are just still active. So I can always go back, and there's just a quick reference for tuning. That's a really cool feature. I actually really enjoy that feature about the Kemper. Okay, let's jump in here. The Kemper looks like it has a lot of buttons and stuff, but it's actually very straightforward. First of all, you might notice some effects, or some knobs that look just like your amplifier. Gain, bass, middle, treble, presence. This should remind you of an amplifier. Rig volume. Here we have an output master volume. People always ask, why are there so many volumes? Well, this master volume is how hot the signal being sent out of the Kemper is. This rig volume is how loud the preset, the rig, or the profile is, whichever term you want to use to describe it. Here we go. You can use this to dial in a sound right here. So if you're just starting with the Kemper, you should feel a little bit at home just changing out bass, middle, treble, and presence controls. And even though they're digital, they work the same. Middle is just where you're starting from. Everything's kind of up at 5 on a profile. Decide if you want more or less of that. I'm using the 2-Stone BD Katana. This is from the Tone Junkie 2-Stone Bloom Pack. Now let me just say this. It's really important to start with a great profile. It's really important to start with a great profile. Starting with a crappy profile with something that someone just maybe made in their bedroom with an SM57 and doesn't know how to mic up an amp, it can be very difficult to get good results. Now, am I saying you need to pay to do that? Not at all. There's a ton of free resources and a ton of paid content from commercial profilers like Tone Junkie that's for free. If you want some great free rigs, go to tonejunkistore.com, get the free pack. Go over to our effects presets page, download all sorts of effects presets that are built into free profiles. You can also check out profilecrate.com, free monthly profiles from Tone Junkie delivered right to your email. Some other people who make some great profiles who I would just want to mention for a minute who are friends of ours. Michael Britt. There's maybe not a more respected name who's had an amount of longevity that is quite remarkable in the Kemper community, and that's nobody has that more than Michael Britt. Michael Britt is universally respected as making high quality profiles. Hell of a player, hell of a guy. I highly recommend you check out Michael Britt's free pack. Some other people, Sayla Sounds and Brian Carl. Great stuff. If you're into heavier music, check out Brian Carl and Sayla Sound stuff. They have some great free stuff as well you should check out. And of course, all these guys have paid stuff. If you like their free stuff, find somebody you really like, somebody whose profiles speak to you, or who have amplifiers you're really into, profiles of those amplifiers, and check out their stuff. If you're into some harder music, Sin Mix does a lot of modern metal stuff that's really good. And I've heard some great things about a lot of other people. Reamp Zone, Tone Hammer. A lot of people love their sort of metal stuff. There's a whole plethora of harder stuff. There's modern metal. There's more vintage metal. There's the really gent style stuff. So go check out that world. You can find a lot of that stuff on the Kemper forums and in some Facebook groups if you want to know more about some of the harder stuff. There's a lot of guys making videos and making profiles, and check out their stuff. And most people have free stuff available. And you can also check out the Rig Exchange, but check out the rig packs from the commercial guys. In my opinion, the Rig Exchange has a lot of bad stuff. There's a lot of good stuff, but for every great profile, there's 100 just not great ones. That's just my opinion, and there's a lot of free stuff, so take the high percentage shot. Take the high percentage shot. Go get some free stuff from Tone Junkie or any of those people I just mentioned. Here's this profile. Here's how it sounds. Okay, sounds good, right? Well, let's say I want to add more mid-range. I'm going to go to the bridge pickup here, and I'm going to add some more mid-range. I'm going to take out some treble, some presence. I'm going to back off the bass a little bit, maybe get a better lead sound. So you can see this EQ is it's powerful. It's actually really powerful. In fact, I would recommend that you use it sparingly, at least at first, until you really get a hold of kind of how strong it is, because 2 blips, 3 blips can really change your sound a lot. But this should be very familiar to you, just like a regular amplifier. Okay, let's get into some of the controls, how to change profiles and whatnot. Here's my profile right here that I'm using, like I mentioned. If I want to go to the next profile, I can just hit Next Rig. Now that is the same rig, but I've added that little plus that I put in there, means that I put a clon in front of it when I was profiling this. All the Tone Junkie profiles, if there's a plus, means there's a clon or a clone type pedal. So here's the regular one. And I might use that for a lead or something. But let's say I just want to go to the next rig. That rig button works there. I can also use this browse knob. Check that out, the browse knob. Look, when I hit it, it goes to a list of all sorts of profiles. I happen to have 876 profiles on this profiler. My other profiler is maxed out with 1,000. I always have to delete some when I'm going to be making some profiles. Now, here's a little tip for you. The Kemper only allows you to put 1,000 on there. If you're creating profiles, it'll allow you to go past 1,000, but then it'll tell you we can't save any more profiles. There's only 1,000. The 1,000 is a limit that Kemper has put on to stop people from putting 7,000, 8,000 rigs on there and making the load up time very long. Because if you just put so many profiles on here, it would take longer to start up. 1,000, it starts up quickly. I noticed between 1,000 and like 200 or less, you maybe can shave 6-7 seconds off the startup time when it's loading up. So not a ton. It can handle 1,000 profiles pretty easily, but just know that you only can put 1,000 on here. Who needs 1,000 different profiles though? That's pretty ridiculous. Unless you're a Tone Junkie Everything Pack customer, then I would say the 1,500 or so profiles that it's up to today, which it's gonna be up to thousands soon. 1,500 profiles, who needs all that? But it's fun to have variety. It's fun to look around and try different stuff. It really is becoming a whole library of tone, and you can really put a whole library of tone on your Kemper. It's really incredible. Anyway, okay, jumping back here, that's how you change the profile. So I can change to an AC30, I can change to a Loman, what we call a basement. Here, I'm gonna go ahead and change to a very different type of amplifier. Here we go. Here's like a matchless. I can clean that up and I can brighten it up. All sorts of sounds in the Kemper. Let me pull up. Here's like a Sir Beaver. That's what we call it. It's like a Sir Badger. Pretty bright, steely kind of sounding thing. Here's a Fender Pro Sonic. Okay, so that's how to change a profile, but look right here. What do we have here? We've got, it looks like a digital representation of a signal chain. Now that's interesting, and our profile comes right in the middle. That two-stone bloom profile is right in the middle. Where else do you see that on the Kemper? Aha, up here. This is an entire visual representation of the signal chain, and it's where we can change out the effects and presets and stuff that we have on our Kemper. So first things first, let's jump over here. Noise gate. Is your Kemper making noise? Is your guitar making noise? Yes, turn it up. If it's not, turn it down, turn it off. A, B, C, D. This is our A, B, C, D blocks, and it's the 4 stop blocks that we can put in the Kemper before the amplifier section or before the profile. So in front of the amp. So I've got a compressor on there right now. Okay, I can just turn that off just by tapping it. Okay, now if I want to change the settings on that compressor, I can tap it to engage it, untap it, or tap it to unengage it. But if I hold it down, now my screen changes to parameters. This is how I edit the effect. I can press exit and go back, my effect is still on. I can go, hey, I like this sound, but I want to add a tube screamer onto it. And it sounds great, and it does its thing, you know. Maybe I'm here and I want to do a lead thing. I'm right here. Kemper's got a tremolo, but so does your guitar. Okay, really though, I can put in any effect I want, and to change that effect, let's say I don't want a tube screamer. I'm going to leave my tube screamer, but I'm going to go to the B effect here, slot B, and let's say I'm going to hold that down so I can see my parameters. This is a delay now. And this is a delay called bad tape with a very degrading tape sound that just gets darker and darker and sort of worse over time. Let's say I want to change it out. Same way I change out a profile. I'm just going to go to the browse knob here and I'm going to click. Oh look, I've got all sorts of delays. I've got reverbs. I've got choruses, distortions, overdrives. I've got everything. Look, here I can put on a little chorus effect. can do sort of a... chorus, tremolo, whatever you want to dial in, you can dial it in. There's overdrives, there's all sorts of stuff. A lot of people use the effects in the Kemper to do something like this. Like I said, I have my core sort of sound here. Now I could dial in a lead sound. Or maybe I just want to up the gain stage. So here's my regular sound again. The Kemper can really do it all. Now, may I remind you, this is just browse mode. This is just one mode. We can actually save 5 rigs, put it in a performance, and control it all with the Profiler remote, which is going to be the next video. Kemper 201 is going to be all about performance mode. We're just into the basics right now of the Kemper. Just Kemper Basics, Kemper 101. Okay, that's how to do different effects. Now, you might be wondering, HW, what about these effects back here? Same exact thing. HW, what are all these knobs on the front of my Kemper? They're quick knobs. They're just little cheap quick knobs. Right here, let's say I don't want to go through this process of holding down the effect to bring up all the parameters. There's some cheat knobs here. Let's say I just want to up the reverb, right, a little bit of my sound, or I want to up the delay or the modulation. Well, those are effects that I just said, reverb, delay, modulation, but really they're corresponding to locations on the Kemper, because you'll notice A, B, C, D, X, mod, delay, reverb. Mod, delay, reverb, you can actually put different effects in these blocks. You can put 2 delays. You can put a delay in mod and a delay in delay, and then these knobs correspond there. So right now I've got a reverb right here. If I want more reverb, I'm just going to up this mix knob, not even going to go into it. And I'm going to up it pretty high. I'm going to make it pretty ambient sounding. I'm going to add some delay. And there you go, instant ethereal delay. Now I'm going to put this back where it was, and one of the cool things about Kemper is it tells you what the original state of the profile was. So it tells me, hey, HW, you were on 44 about here on the mix, and on the time you were at 4.3 seconds, and then the mix, same thing, you were down here at 32. And I love that because it allows me to go up, change it, and then go back very easily, kind of have a point of reference there. Now, that's the whole top of the Kemper. That and the master volume, which I'm not going to explain what a master volume does, but this corresponds to the output of the device, whereas this rig volume is the volume of that sound in the Kemper compared to other sounds. You just mastered the top half of the Kemper. Now, let's say I made some changes and there I am. I want to store this thing. I want to save it. Well, there's a store button. Hit that store button. It's going to say replace. Do you like what you have more now? Do you like what you have now more than you did a couple minutes ago? Go ahead and replace it. You'll update this one. You'll save it. Then there's a store as. Think of that as save as. If you hit store as, you're going to create another version of it. So maybe I want to create a version for this guitar and my Telly and my Les Paul. same profile, but I've dialed in different effects. I've changed the EQ. There you go. You can do that. Or rename. Do I want to rename it something else? And I'll say that'll create a new version and rename it. Maybe I want to name it JM Pro. Here you go. Now, let's talk really quickly about how to make these things sound good, because you're going to be getting profiles, and there's a lot of misconception out there like, oh, well, you got to use the same pickups and the same guitar as a profiler did when he made the thing. That's horse nonsense. That's really not true at all. First of all, you have a very powerful EQ here. Now, does this EQ act like the EQ on a Vox AC30 if you're using a Vox AC30 profile? No, it can't. A lot of times your Vox AC30, actually almost all the time, it's not going to have a mid knob unless you've got some clone that adds a mid knob. But there's no mid knob. So this is a fixed EQ. This is a really powerful EQ. And whenever people say, oh, you're getting away from the authentic sound of the amplifier, I really don't worry about that too much because, again, like I said in the top of the video, you've never heard any of the famous guitar sounds that you enjoy. You never heard the amp in the room, and trust me, there's always an EQ on any of those recordings. There's EQ from the microphone, there's EQ from the placement of the microphone, then there's an actual EQ. If it was done on tape, that's an EQ. If it was sent to a channel on the board, there was EQ there. If it was ever remixed or remastered, they split those out probably to digital by now, and all the remasterings you're listening to were done on digital. Any modern recording that wasn't done immediately to tape, even if it was bounced to tape later on, there's an EQ sitting on that track in Pro Tools, in Logic. Please don't be afraid to add an EQ. I mean, if you add a 1K presence to a guitar track, you haven't destroyed the sound of it. You can't make a twin sound like a Vox AC30 by adding 1K or 3K. You just can't. It's just that an amp sounds like so many things, the EQ, but also the character of the breakup and stuff, and that's not achievable by just going up and down on an EQ spectrum. So, if you go crazy with this thing, yeah, it's going to sound like the Beatles trying to make their amp sound crazy on the White Album and going direct in and stuff. Like, you can make it sound not like the amp, but if you just make some adjustments, you brighten something up, that's what you do. But what I want to show you is there's some parameters that the Kemper actually has that normal amplifiers don't really have, and I think they're important to go through. So those that are really important. If you want to dial in a profile now, I'm just going to give you some tips here. If you want to dial in a profile, sit down with a profile, listen to it. Okay, let's say I want to brighten that up. I could brighten it with my treble and my presence. Let's say I want a little less bass. I can pull the bass back. Now I've got a sound that might come forward a little more. It's a little brighter, right? There you go. As opposed to this. It's not a huge difference, but you can hear I'm adding in some brightness, I'm taking out some of that bass, and maybe I'm giving myself a little more of a spot, a little more presence to just stick out a little bit. Those are very subtle adjustments. Now, the first place I would start, honestly, you could start there with the EQ, and I think those are fine for normal adjustments. Go in here to the amplifier section. There's some, just like you can hold down the soft switch for effects, you can hold down the amplifier soft switch, and boom, we have all sorts of parameters. I'm going to really quickly tell you what these parameters do. Definition. It adds a definition, and we're going to perceive this as like brightness to the tone. So here we go. We're at 5.4. I'm going to pull that back. It's going to get darker. I'm going to push it way up. You're going to hear it as brighter, it's more defined, there's more attack on the notes. Really what this is dialing in is a characteristic of the harmonics and the high end and stuff, and it's really simulating kind of the response you got from old vintage amps. And then there's kind of a really high end that you get with like a matchless amp or a modern boutique amp. The point is, you can really use this definition control to match it to your guitar. And I think that's a really great place to start. In fact, I often would tell people, dial it in first, 85% of the way there with the definition control, then look at some other parameters, and then start to dial in bass, treble, middle sparingly with EQ. Power sag, this represents how much sag there is from like a tube rectifier. like an orange AD30 would have a lot of sag. Check this out. No sag at all. You'll notice when I hit the sag, it's going to compress the note at first, it's going to jump up and then decay. It's going to sag up front. You might know that feeling if you played an amp that sags a lot. It's kind of a feel thing. You can kind of hear it. There's a bloom that happens sort of after you've hit the note. It compresses initially and then uncompresses and then fades naturally. It's an interesting effect. It's a very cool control. It's something you get on a tube amplifier, but you don't have a parameter to control. It's really a function of the tube rectifier, really. And really it's a way to sort of be like higher sag. It's going to feel more like, more like a certain tube rectifier than others. It's going to feel more like a tube, less solid state. It's going to feel like a, I don't know, 5Y3 or something. Pick parameter, it makes the pick attack a little stronger. The compressor is really unique. It's a compressor that comes after the amplifier but before the cabinet, right? So check this out. Now, I can easily, just like any tube amplifier, I can soften my attack. I can also turn that up and it's going to even out my attack, but the front of the amplifier is still going to see all the dynamic range of all of my playing. With a Dirtio Profile, you're going to notice that this is almost like a touch sensitivity control, and it's really useful. Going into these other things, clarity, it's affecting sort of a little bit of the mid-range, some of the high-end. It takes out some of the congestion. You can dial that in. There's a volume control here. You might enjoy a slight bump. That's how to use the Kemper, guys. That's how to use the Kemper. Next video, we're going to get right into the performance mode. I can't wait. I'm HW. I hope this was helpful. By the way, there's a headphone jack in the front. If anyone tells you you're too loud, tell them, no problem. And then just shove your headphone jack right in there, put your headphones on, and you're good to go. Can you do that with a tube amp? Some of them. Actually, any tube amps have a headphone jack? Maybe, I'm really not sure. I've been HW. I hope this has been helpful. HW, out!